We are back once again for another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast right here on capesandtights.com. Episode 92. Almost at 100, but at 92 with Dan Panosian, who is a artist, writer, creator, comic book industry veteran here on the Capes and Tights podcast. We talked his comic book series that came out on AWA on February 1st. Black Tape with issue 1. Issue 2 hits shelves March 8th, and issue 3 is coming April 19th, with issue 4 coming near after that. It's a 4-issue series over at AWA Studios. We also touched on a little bit on Else Ever After over at Boom and much more. So enjoy this episode with Dan Panosian on the Capes and Tights podcast. But before you do, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and also Apple, Spotify, and all your major podcasting platforms for a 5-star review. Please subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff. Enjoy episode 92 with Dan Panosian, comic book writer and artist. Thanks, everyone. Welcome. How are you, Dan? How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we just talked a little bit before recording. We're on either ends of the spectrum here. You're in Los Angeles. I'm Maine. Weather's a little different, a little cold outside right now, but it's starting to become spring here in Maine, so I'm happy about that. Sunny Los Angeles, right?
Well, I don't know. It's been pretty cold lately. I mean, we've got East Coast temperatures out here, and it's also raining quite a bit, and I have leaks, so it's real pleasant.
That's the one thing I will say, is that my house is fairly new. I live in a townhouse, and we moved in when they had finished. Like, literally, we signed our lease to rent this place originally when they didn't even have like studs in the wall. Like, it was like framework of the place. I had lived in a different place from the same landlord, and I was like, "Hey, you're building these new spots. How about we move in?" And so we're actually the first tenants here. So we're actually pretty happy that there's no leaks, no issues. Yeah.
Yeah, California is not made for rain. So every time it rains, these houses, like, new things pop up. Also, the power inevitably goes out because, heaven forbid, there's a drop of rain. Like, traffic is just, people are freaking out. We're not used to it for sure, especially Southern California.
But it's funny, and here in Maine, we were used to crazy high cold temperatures and weather, but still people like decide that they have to go like take all the bread and the milk and the eggs out of the supermarket and hoard it all because they feel like that they're going to be stuck in their houses for weeks on end. The last time I was stuck in my house for almost a week was 1997. So wow. It's over 20 years since I've done that. So it's a different animal, but still, as long as you have some food and water, you're fine. You're not have to pack down for the apocalypse here. But so obviously you've been in the comic book industry for a while. I won't say a long time, but for a while. And let's go back a little bit. Like, what's the origin story for you? Like, what's your comic book origin story? How'd you get into comics, reading and collecting in the first place, and then actually into the industry?
Well, my dad was a commercial artist, but he also was always trying his hand at doing like syndicated comic strip work. But he liked comic books. He grew up in the Depression era, so he was like an older father, but he was kind of a hippie, I guess, in his own way. Like, he was a very interesting man, but he loved comic books, so he introduced me to. I think one of the first comics I ever had was that Neil Adams Batman, where Joker's holding Batman in that card. That was one of my first comics, and he had worked tangentially with Neil Adams on some kind of Neil had like a advertising agency. Continuity they also did advertising work and commercial work. So I think he done some Burger King artwork. I was pretty sure it was Neil Adams. And looking back, and my dad had picked up all the basically the stuff Neil didn't want to draw, or their studio didn't have enough time for. Or I don't know how it worked. I was a little kid. But my dad was aware of Neil Adams. He knew who Joe Kubert was, John Buscema. He liked Walt Simonson and Alex Nino. I'm trying to just think of some of the artists he was familiar with and who he introduced me to. And so I kind of got into it in that way, and just started. I think I really got into collecting when I was maybe in the sixth, seventh grade, because I grew up at that point. Our family had moved to Florida, and I could like bicycle to a comic book shop, even though it was miles and miles away. I could get there and hang out. I had more of my own time, so it was fun. I mean, I just really got into it. I'd always been drawing, and by the time I was 14, I decided this is what I want to do with my life.
And it turned out pretty well, huh?
Well, I don't know if I'd advise my son to be a comic book artist. I'd say be a dentist or something. But
And do the comic book art on the side, right? Like do every once
yeah,
in a while, do
yeah,
an issue
enjoy it.
here.
Collect comics, enjoy them. You can always draw in your free time.
Yeah.
You know?
So at some point, I mean, you started obviously you broke in mainly as an artist, but at some point you started to start writing some comic books. What was the first comic book that you got published that was writing?
It was probably at Extreme Studios.
Okay.
Maybe that was Extreme Prejudice Zero, or maybe it was Profit Zero. I don't remember, but it was little things like that. And I'd written some other tiny things, for smaller publishers. But that was my dream. Like I grew up reading, John Byrne comics when I was a teenager, and Walt Simonson and Frank Miller, and I had subscriptions, all these things. And my favorite, I just leaned towards the artists that actually did the writing. Also, I mean, you have a very pure vision at that point, and then Frank Miller broke off. He was writing things, and Dave Gibbons was drawing them, and etc. And Jeff Darrow and Bill Sienkiewicz, and I mean, you name it, Mazzucchelli. I mean, all these artists kind of sprung. I wouldn't say Dave Gibbons sprung from that, but certainly Dave Mazzucchelli got that massive spotlight and was able to showcase his unbelievable skills with very meaty stories that people just chomped right into. I mean, that was my inspiration. It still is. I still have like this. I'm thrilled I can do this, and now I'm finally in a place where I can write a lot more. Like I'm writing these days more than I'm drawing, which is a lot of fun. Definitely enjoy it.
It's not the one's easier than the other. What would you say? Would you rather, like, if you had to choose one, would you rather write or would you rather draw?
I never thought about that. But
obviously it's a stupid question because of the fact that you don't ever have to choose. You have to choose. Yeah, I mean, if you lost the ability to draw for some weird reason, you could still type.
It'd probably be the writing, honestly, because you can collaborate a lot more. And I didn't know when I first, because I'd written slots and drawn it also, and written a few other little things here and there. And it wasn't until I started working at Boom where other people were drawing the stories. I was a little nervous and apprehensive, like, well, I have a very clear idea of how I think this should look. But man, it's really fun to see an interpretation of, that just watching the collaboration happen in real time is a lot of fun. It brings that kind of joy of comic books right into it.
Obviously, I mentioned off the top that we want to talk a little bit about Black Tape, actually before we recorded, I said that honestly. Now that I think about it, but yeah, so Black Tape is a new book that recently we're at issue 2 now on at AWA Studios, right? I believe that's where it is, right?
Yeah, it's AWA.
I was like, I don't know why I was second guessing myself on that, but the AWA Studios is where that came out as well. So this second issue just dropped last week, I believe. Now that we're the time of this recording, how did that story come about?
Well, I mean, I grew up in that era where I love horror movies like that, those type of films. I don't hate like Scream or anything like that, but I really prefer movies like The Omen or Rosemary's Baby, or that more thriller aspect and suspense horror genre. But I also like cult films like Billy Jack, and I wanted to merge like that Alfred Hitchcock sort of weird. Maybe Alfred Hitchcock isn't even the right word, because I don't know if he would have tackled something like this, but I don't think that was his speed, the Satanism and rock and roll. But it's that kind of vibe. It's more this comic book is more of a slow burn. It's not a gore fest. There's not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, vampires on every page shredding people up and, you know, blood splattering everywhere. It's, but you know, there would, believe me, it's going to be in there. It's going to be gory, but there's going to be some nice build to it. So I want to, everything I do, I want to give it kind of a cinematic approach. And this was no different. I you know, I see it unfolding that way, even if, you know, it's never developed or anything. I think from a entertainment platform,
Mm-hmm.
you know, some of the best comic books do that. They, you know, like Watchmen kind of builds, and you know, these, I think we need a little bit more of that in comics, or at least I do. So, you know, you got to please yourself first. But I live in Laurel Canyon where Black Tape takes place. It's a big
Mm-hmm.
rock and roll mecca, or at least, you know, used to be during that time period, like the late 60s, 70s. You know, a lot of great musicians collaborated here. They still live here. You know, you got icons like Rick Rubin out here, just, you know, blocks away from me. It's pretty cool, you know, and I don't know. I've always been fascinated with that kind of 60s cult Satanism sort of thing. You know, you see the devil dressed up and he's got like a pipe and, you know, maybe a Hugh Hefner style outfit of some kind. I mean, it's just kind of goofy, but it also, what was crazy is back then, like anything devil related just terrified, you know, the general public. It was so, you know, oh my God, this is awful. Like, you know, Kiss was considered like this horrible, you know, oh my God, you let your children listen to Kiss? What's wrong with you? You don't know what they're saying. Wish they played that record backwards, you know?
And now you've got movies where people are throwing up in the theaters and passing out at the theater.
Yeah, I mean, it's insanity. But back then it was, you know, a rock group like Kiss, or, you know, you can listen to Ozzy even doing, you know, you can go back now, you can watch all these interviews on YouTube. It's like early Ozzy. And he's just like, no, it's a shtick, and we're having fun, and you know, but it didn't matter. It, you know,
I believe they're called entertainers. Is that what?
Yeah,
like that's their job is entertaining.
Yeah, that's what's funny about it, and I just love that fear mongering that went along with it, and so I wanted to kind of capture that kind of like period aspect of it, and I just you know, I just love movies like that. I like those cars. I like that music. I like the people and the weird, you know, evil stereotypes. You know.
And for those who will be listening to this and don't know, the Black Tape is based off of Jack King, who was a rock and roll god who projected a stage persona on par with the devil. After Jack dies on stage, his widow Sydney grapples with grief and struggles to protect his legacy, unaware that she is being surrounded by dark forces that covet the master tapes to Jack's final unreleased album, a heavy metal masterpiece that just might open a doorway to hell. Which right there, again, if you're into any of that stuff, that solicitation is like, okay, I got to buy this book. What led to just writing the book instead of being the cartoonist and illustrating it as well? Is it just timing, or is it the partnership
basically
with
timing? And you know, you're as a comic book creator in any capacity, you're always pitching, and you're you know, doing, so you don't know what's gonna go and when it's gonna go. So you might be working on a project. You know, at this case, when we started this pre-COVID with a different artistic team. It was like a dream team, handpicked by the Axel Alonso, and you know, when I found out these two were available, I was blown away. That didn't necessarily work out. I mean, it was kind of a bittersweet thing, but then Axel suggested Dalibor, and I saw his work. And what I like about it is it doesn't look like superhero. Like you can't see that guy necessarily drawing the X-Men. And you know, luckily comics are so diversified now as far as the genres and styles that, you know, a guy like Dalibor is never going to be out of work. Like he brings something to the table, and emotionality. Like you know, you can see the doubt on someone's face, or the fear, or the anguish, or the trepidation. Like that's a very crucial story. You know, that makes for a good storyteller. Sorry. And so he brings something very unique. There's also, like, if you look at it, you go, oh, Jesus, this could have came out, you know, in a Warner Creepy magazine, or, or some black and white Marvel magazine back then. It has that cool quality. So very thankful for Dalibor, the colorist. Ive is killing it also. Every part of it, the editing's been great. We've had a lot of time to work on it and craft it. Originally, it was going to be an additional issue, but we had to condense it, which is not, sometimes that's a bad thing, but sometimes it's good because you're really forcing a lot. I do know a lot of readers do want a lot of action. So do I, as a comic book reader. So I think the negative can be a positive.
And I love the way I might be in the minority. I don't know. I haven't really seen how it has come out yet, but like miniseries are great to me, in my opinion. And a 4-issue miniseries, one of those things that, like, if you're apprehensive to pick up a book, but the pitch sounds pretty good, but you're like, I don't know, I don't want to commit to something. Someone can commit to 4 issues. Like, that's not hard for you to commit to a reading and getting into. But like you mentioned, sometimes squishing things in can. I feel like you had the right issue number 1. I don't obviously want to spoil it for anybody, but issue number 1 had enough in it to get you introduced to the characters that you were portraying in the book, but also set yourself up, but also not go too fast, but not too slow. It was a really good timing on that. And then a nice, like, almost like cliffhanger at the end of like an episode of a TV show would have, where you found something out and you're like, oh, interesting. I really need to pick up the next issue next. But not enough that you get pissed off that you didn't learn enough in the issue.
Yeah.
And
crucial.
It's very crucial. And so, but also, like you mentioned with Dalibor, like the artwork in this is great, because up close has a lot of detail. The further background has a detail, where there's no detail in the background when there doesn't need to be. And it is this sense of darkness to it, but also brightness to it. I don't know. It works out very well. And the partnership between the two of you definitely worked out well for Black Tape, for sure.
There's a lot of, the collaboration is interesting because it's not, I don't want to being an artist myself, I don't want to step on another artist's toes at all, because I know how that feels. I don't, me personally, I don't like a lot of art direction. I'd like to, I grew up, I got, speaking of Neil, I got to work with him for a little while. And he goes, when it's in your hands, whether you're the inker, the letterer, the penciler, colorist, it's in your hands now. And now it's your job to complete that part of it and move forward. That's your vision, and nobody should be telling you, what's going on there. So I kind of took that to heart. It's hard to make Los Angeles gloomy. We do have a pollution problem, or less and less now, thank God. But in general, it's pretty bright and sunny out here most of the time. So to give it a horror feeling, you have to be kind of clever. The color, it has to be clever. The locations have to be clever. When the story takes place, typically more so at night, is going to give it that ominous feel, and little things you can do. Make
like
paradise
being inside.
You want to make paradise a little bit of a hell. So that's what was our goal.
And it couldn't, I say easy, but it could have been a direction you could have gone, is just focusing on Jack King and his connection to the hell and door to hell and all that stuff. But the idea that you made it his widow, Cindy, who is the actual one that's discovering this stuff, and so on and so forth, while trying to protect his legacy. I think that's a great storyline too, because it's just a little bit different than what some people might have done, what direction that someone else might have gone.
Yeah, I think we could have very easily taken it like the struggle between Jack and his record label, and it could have been all about that, like him trying to get out from under. And but Cindy is really just a fish out of water. She's a fan, basically, who a groupie who got to marry her rock star, god, her fantasy, and then all of a sudden, before she knows it, she's all alone. She's a fish out of water in Los Angeles, surrounded by sharks. And we've all been there. Anytime you move to a new city, go to a new school, start a new job, you're a fish out of water. You feel kind of alone, and so it's a very relatable position. And then you add the element of her life being in danger, and that definitely ups the stakes and makes for a good story.
Yes. Yeah. Did you have to do, obviously you said you're a big fan of a lot of the things you use in this comic. Did you have to do some research though, on top of what you already knew?
Yeah, I did. I thought about it towards the end, especially when you get to issue 4. I mean, I wanted to make, uh, for the record, I'm not a Satanist, so I had to really kind of study, like, well, what's these ceremonies like? What are these things like? Who are the people involved? And are there any, you know, books that are considered like holy text, etc. So I had to kind of, there's a very Hollywood term, I had to do a deep dive into that. But you're learning about that stuff. You're learning about the people who kind of crafted that cultism, the turn of the century up until like the 50s and 60s, and the lifestyle and how they did that. And it's very interesting. So I wanted, like, if there are people that are really like deep into, they want to find, like, oh no, that's not real. This is not real. I think they'll look at it and go, oh my God, that's actually on point. So maybe by the end of Black Tape, if you read it, you can summon the devil.
Look at that. I don't know. Or you read it backwards, right? You read
Yeah,
it
if you read it
backwards.
backwards, you can. Yeah, but that was the idea. I was like, I want to make this as authentic and cool as possible, but also just, sometimes if you're too married to reality, it can kind of suck the life out of the story.
Yeah. Well, and you go. This is on the heels of releasing Alice Ever After too, right, over at Boom, and so you're now more of a not children's story, but what people consider a children's story, but going dark, into this Satanism and all this. You just all over the, not all of us. You're all dark over here, right?
Oh yeah, it's definitely dark here. What's funny is my wife was like, "Well, I have that little nickname that I always give myself with all my like Twitter and Instagram handles, Urban Barbarian." She was interesting that the Urban Barbarian, it's got a book called Black Tape, but it's a girl protagonist, and Alice in Wonderland is give me a little bit of hell about it.
That's amazing. But speaking of it, are you getting more issues of Alice Ever After? I think they announced
sealed. That. Yeah. I was going to say, my lips are sealed. I'm not allowed to say anything. It says,
according to Boom, a journey back at a twisted wonderland of Alice Ever After was announced at Comics Pro on February 20th.
Oh, they did?
Yes, they announced it. It says, yeah, I got an email from the press release from the media department, marketing department. It says, as well as Damn Them All and Briars also getting new arcs. And a journey back to the twisted wonderland of Alice Ever After is also
very cool. Okay, I didn't know they had announced it yet.
Yeah, so look at that. So
that's great. Yeah, we're working on it now.
That's awesome.
A lot of fun. It's I kind of like this series even better than the first one, and I think it's going to give fans more of what they liked from the first one, because everyone's curious about Wonderland, and so Alice Ever After took place. It's primarily in the real world, hypothetically, and there's little bits going back to Wonderland, like we see little glimpses of it. In this, it's kind of the reverse. So it's more, I'd say it's 90% Wonderland. So it's a lot of fun, and it gives you a lot of room to play.
Yes,
whether you're the writer or the artist. Like, I've already seen pages, and it's beyond my expectations. I was like, oh wow, we should have switched originally for the roles, because we're lucky enough to have the same team back, and it's going to be. I'm already blown away. I was looking at pages today. It's amazing.
Oh, is this something that you went into writing? And what was it? Was Alice Ever After #1? Was it 6 issues or 5 issues?
I think it was 6. No, it was 5.
I think it was 6. Yeah, 5. Yeah,
I think it was 5 for some reason. I think Boom's format is 5. I could be wrong.
I think you might be right. 5. It's 5. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I have it right here. So you got obviously given 5 issues, and then because it did well, is that why you're getting more? Or is that like?
Yeah, I think they were happy with it, and the pitch for the second series, I pitched about 3 things, and they greenlit all 3 things at Boom, and we just kept shuffling around, like, well, which one? Which one's the strongest? And they came back to this one, and I couldn't be more pleased, because I really was excited. You don't always get the opportunity to revisit these things. Like with I did that book Slots. I wanted to do more. I had up to 24 issues planned. I think every writer, anybody in any capacity in this thing, that you get excited and you start planning and planning and planning. Same thing with An Unkindness of Ravens for Boom. I had 24 issues planned. It just it didn't get the audience it needed necessarily. But man, I would have loved to continue that. So this opportunity, I jumped on it. I'm like, it's not gonna, you never know. And Alice luckily did pretty well. So hopefully it continues.
Yeah, and I like that format. I was talking about earlier about miniseries and the idea that I wouldn't have a problem with all publishers just giving someone 4 or 5 issues, 6 issues, play around with it. If it does well, then we'll continue going on. We'll do a second story arc. We'll call it Alice Ever After : something, or whatever you want to do. And that way you're not committing. And a lot of us as readers would hate to read 3 issues of a comic book and then have it be canceled, or 4 issues.
Oh, yeah.
To be more. And so just saying, we're going to give you 4 issues, 5 issues, and there you go. And if it does well, great. Throw it, sell it in trade, and great. Mm-hmm. Or we can do more if it's somewhat open ended at the end, or if it lives in the same universe. Like if the book closed, but maybe you have something that lives in the same universe you can offshoot it from. That format's great, and obviously it worked with Alice Ever After, and it's going to work with Briar. It sounds like, and it sounds like, what was the other one I read? Damn Them All. Both of those are getting new story arcs, even though they were only miniseries to start off with.
That's what I learned mostly from An Unkindness of Ravens. Like, it was a big story, and you don't know if you're going to get, issue 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So what happened at the end of Unkindness of Ravens, it's kind of you can kind of fill in, you connect the dots and figure out what's going to happen, but there's not a conclusion at that point. To the trade paperback, it's kind of like, oh, I guess we know who's who. A lot of the questions, probably 60, 70% of the questions are answered. But, I learned, like, look, you have one chance, you have 5 issues, tell the story that you want to tell in 5 issues, because you might not get another chance to revisit.
And with obviously the miniseries Black Tape, and then you have this one coming up too. Are you still drawing other places too, or is this
I'm finishing up right now the last issue of Canary with Scott Snyder, and that's being published by Comixology, and then Dark Horse is going to collect everything. And I don't know, I think their business model is to publish them issue by issue and then collect it into a trade paperback, and we might do an artist edition for that, hopefully.
Cool.
And put it on Kickstarter or Zoop or one of those crowdfunding platforms. But so I'm drawing now. I'm doing a lot of covers, and then I have after Canary, I'll be drawing something else, most likely something I write. So it's exciting, and I do a lot of. The covers are fun too.
Yes.
You get to dabble in all these different characters, and I like my job. Pretty happy with it.
Yes, I like the cover artist part, and doing variant covers and other covers like that for other issues. I've always equated it in somewhat sense to someone who letters books for various comic books too, which is the idea that you get to work on a bunch of different people's projects, and if you get stuck on one thing, you just continuously drawing the same characters. But if you get to do, if you're in the industry, and if you can draw a Star Wars comic book if you want, or Elektra or whatever, it's kind of cool to be able to do all that and still also have your own creator, own projects as well.
Yeah, it's like, even we have Richard Starking's lettering Canary, and he'll write. I'm just always love that guy's work, and I just equate him with some of my favorite comic books. So seeing him excited about the work, I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. And what he does with the pages, and getting the proofs beforehand, all of it, it's enjoyable.
It's awesome. I think Black Tape's great. I think Black Tape has a little bit of all the elements that you would want, and it's different than what you see on the market right now. I think it's one of those ones that stands alone. There's a few rock and roll horror type books.
Actually, there's one that came out. Wasn't there one that came out the same month as Black Tape?
Yes, what was it?
What's the name of that one? It's from IDW though.
Yes, it is. I just Breath of Shadows.
Yeah, and when I saw that, I wasn't even aware of it until Black Tape came out, because I was like looking at that, and I had even like tweeted something, because I was like, oh, I like that cover, and also Black Tape was right next to it on the stands when I had taken a picture, and then I looked into it. I'm like, oh my god, I hope it's not the same type of, and it's so different. It couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
which is great. But man, I was a little concerned initially.
Yes. Which is funny because I had actually about 3 or 4 episodes ago, I actually had Alex and Rich on, the creators of that book, and they didn't even they brought up black tape. It's not even like in their minds, it wasn't even, like I said, there's this connection to the rock and roll part, but otherwise they're both different. It's their own
like a
thing.
superhero, like they were both wearing capes. Batman has a cape, Superman has a cape. But yeah, I was happy. I was happy it wasn't the same thing.
See, but outside that, there's the idea that there's not much out there for this style. So I love that standalone issue, that if you're into something like this, then pick this up, because it's definitely worth it. And it's only 4 issues. And that's the big thing to me, is like, grab 4 issues of a comic book, make it simple, read the whole thing. Issue 3 drops in April 19th, I believe. And so that would be your third of the 4 issues. And I'm guessing issue 5 comes in, or issue 4 comes in May, right? That's what I'm guessing.
Issue 4 is a little oversized. Okay. Which is nice. But that's what I like about AWA. I think every issue, if I'm not mistaken, has a different page count. I mean, there's never going to be anything below 22 pages, but I think in some cases there's 24. I think the final issue might be 28. We didn't get 5 issues, but we were able to do get a little bit longer. The trade paperback's going to be awesome. We got some amazing. We got Dave Johnson cover. I convinced Walt Simonson to draw a cover. I got to ink. I didn't get to ink it. I colored it though. And we got that amazing Joe Quesada cover. I got to ink and color that. So there's some. Kerry Nord did a great cover. Mike Diodato, and then even the team. Ferguson at AWA made all these, I guess, homages to famous rock albums. Mm-hmm. So that was cool too.
Yeah,
the variant covers on this are pretty neat.
That's the cool thing I think about when you have a book that's in the genre, like a if it's a horror movie type thing, people doing the movie VHS variants of things, but like having this be in the rock and roll genre, you can always add that. You said there's like an AC/DC album, I believe.
Yeah.
There's a couple different rock and roll.
Jack is Back instead of Back in Black. And,
those are always fun, because I mean, those are the ones that if you're big into rock and roll, then that's a variant cover that you might be able to pick up.
Yeah. You even have a Motley Crue one, Shout at the Devil, which is not quite that era, but it's still cool to see.
Yeah.
Black Sabbath, they did.
Actually, it's funny. I thought about it afterwards too.
Black Sabbath one.
Horror comic book. It's a rock and roll horror comic book. I wrote it's such like a metal comic book, and I was like, a metal cover variant would have been great.
Yeah,
like a limited edition 50 copies of a metal cover of a rock and roll.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, they did a black tape Masters of Hell or Master of Hell cover. Mm-hmm. I was just looking at the different covers they have online here. But yeah, it's so cool to do that stuff, and it give you obviously do cover A because you can't stay away, right? You just got to make sure you're.
I have to, and I also for every book I've worked on where I created it, I do the logo also.
Okay.
So I'll create the logo. I create the logo for Ravens, for Slots, for this book that Mad Cave is collecting. It was a European. They do those oversized graphic albums, and so they're collecting both albums of John Tiffany that I drew over there for Lombard with Steven Desberg. Steven Desberg's the writer of Scorpions, and one of my favorite artists, Enrico Marini, is he did all of them. I think he's already done like 12 or 13 volumes of it. But it was kind of an honor to work over there, and it's an honor that Mad Cave is collecting them, and we added some additional pages to that. But it was exciting. Like I'm happy. I just love that. It all takes me back to my childhood, where I get to create the logo. I get to have my hand in every part of the pie there.
I love the logo too, because that's one thing that if anybody listens to this podcast on a regular basis, and it sounds like a broken record, but I've just with the way we have creators and designers and artists in there, and then you have a comic book that comes out with a subpar logo and trade dress. I've always just been like, how many people went past this, and no one was like, yeah, we got to change what this says here, because this doesn't work with whatever we're doing here. And it goes up from big 2 all the way down to the small publishers. I'm just saying,
I'm shocked. I'll do a cover for Marvel or DC, and the logo placement or the size of the logo or just the logo itself, I'm like, that is absolute garbage. It just ruins it, And then I just did a variant cover for Venom, and they did the logo perfect. I'm like, wait a minute, the old Marvel's back.
Yes.
This is like classic Marvel. I'm like, whoever put that one together, like they knocked it out of the park.
I just don't get it, because I'm like, I'm a designer by trade, and I don't want to like pat myself on the back, but I was like, I don't want to, like, I see a logo on the comic book, and I'm just like, some places you don't even see the art. Some places have these in racks that the logo is what you see, and if it's not an attractive logo, then no one's gonna buy it. At least put something simple.
There's some logos that are cool looking, but they're completely unreadable. Then there's some that are just like so underdesigned, and then there's some that are such a throwback to like maybe the 80s Marvel comics that you're like, that just looks out of date. There's nothing.
But it could be where, I have a Captain, the Marvel Comics group, Marvel team up Spider-Man and Captain. It could be like that too. It's just cool, but it's also like trying to figure out what that comic book is actually called.
Yeah.
It's confusing too, because they're like, is it a Spider-Man comic book? Is it Captain Britain comic book? No, it's a Marvel team up comic book, but the team up is so tiny. So there is this, but like, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes I see a logo that works so well that I'm so happy that I want to shout out the person that did it. Black Tape's great. I love the logo for Black Tape. So that's it works so well. It's also, they have a very dark covers for most of them, I'm guessing. So the white text pops right off of it. Yeah. Perfect. So it's great.
There was another logo that was drawn by the first team that was exceptional. I think it was Rico Renzi created it, and I looked at it. I'm like, if he had stayed if he was still on the book, we would have used that logo, because it was just, he knocked it out of the park. It was perfect.
But this is great too, and this book came out well. So like, I'm pretty excited for issues 3 and 4. I got to actually read issues 2 again, because it's one of those ones that I like went through it because I just got it the other day. And but yeah, so before I close it up here, I'm gonna close this up right here for the game. With art, you're illustrating, you're writing, and all this stuff. What does a typical day look like for you? Like, do you wake up, do a specific thing, a specific day, or do you just try to fit whatever deadlines first and put that in?
It honestly depends on the deadlines, because I try to like wear a few hats, and you just can't. It's hard to switch gears. Like I do have a son, and there's school, and it breaks up the day significantly. So I try to focus on one thing per day. Like if I'm doing a cover, luckily I'm pretty fast with the art. I'll draw the cover and color it that day. That might mean I'm up until midnight, but I'm like, I'm getting this thing done, so tomorrow I have a fresh start. And I also get kind of bored easily. Like I don't want to keep staying on the same thing. With the writing, luckily it's creator-owned stuff, so I'm inspired, and that goes pretty quickly. Time flies, but yeah, I have to. It's whoever needs the thing the quickest. I don't like to miss deadlines, so I like to be on top of it.
The people you work with must love you then, because missing deadlines, I'm sure, is not a fun thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're still getting work, so obviously
I'm still getting work. We'll know if it trips off a little bit, then we'll know I'm doing something wrong.
But I'm very excited, and I'm glad you came on, because Black Tape over at AWA is amazing people. Issue 1 and 2 are available now. Hopefully, like I always say this, hopefully issue 1 sold out, because that's a good thing. But if it's not, go to your LCS and grab issue 1 and then issue 2, and then ask them to get issue 3 for April 19th, right around that day. And then there's a 4th one coming as well. Also, pick up LS Ever After. I believe that's available in trade right now as well.
Yeah, it just came out in trade.
Yep. Yeah, so that's available. And then obviously look for more news coming up in that. But that was announced at Comics Pro at the end of February that there's more coming for Alice Ever After. And then follow you on Urban Barbarian on Twitter and Instagram, right?
Yeah, please.
And buy your variant covers. Yeah. I mean,
thanks, man.
Doing a great job.
The spotlight. Thanks,
absolutely. So we'll have you on again at some point in the future, but I really appreciate you coming on, talking comics and talking Black Tape and a little Alice Ever After, and everything in between. Enjoy the rest of your day in somewhat sunny, wet, not wet, smoggy
today.
California. Yeah. Okay, there you go. For now, right?
For now. Yeah.
But I really appreciate you coming on again, Dan. And again, best of luck and everything in the future.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it. Cheers, everybody.